1 year after the catastrophic floods in Pakistan, life in the disaster-hit regions have not resumed to normal levels. And children have been the ones most impacted by that lasting damage, specifically access to education. Some 27,000 schools were destroyed by those floods, and many remain closed due to the lack of clean water and sanitation. According to United Nations figures, that's prevented roughly 2 million children from showing up in classrooms. DW's Binish Javed reports.
When the floods hit last year, Kunj and her family had no choice but to leave their home. Her entire life uprooted. What the 10-year-old missed the most was going to school. As water receded, the family returned back to their home in a village in southern Sindh province of Pakistan. Things are finally getting back to normal. Kunj's morning now starts with preparing for her school. Her old school in the village is still damaged from the floodwater, which means she has to walk 3 to 4 kilometers to reach her new school in another village. She sometimes joins a group of other girls from her village. Walking together is safer.
My studies were going really well. Then we were suddenly hit by floods. After that, I was unable to meet my friends. I cried a lot. I used to miss my home and my school.
This is the only operational school in the vicinity of 4 villages. One reason parents are now sending their children, and especially girls, to the school is because the school has toilet facilities.
The floodwater had destroyed the boundary walls of the school and also the toilets. When we opened the school, only 100 students were coming and no girls were there. When we spoke to the parents, they said they can't send their girls here if the toilets had no boundary walls.
While male teachers and students can use bushes as makeshift toilets, it is culturally unacceptable for girls. Without proper toilet facilities, the safety of girls is at risk. They can face harassment and also diseases like cholera. A few months ago, the school management was able to build separate toilets for girls with the help of local NGOs. Clean running water in a school is a rare blessing in the region. The girls have been taught cleanliness practices to ensure they don't fall sick. This school in a nearby village has been completely damaged. Walls washed away, toilets and furniture completely destroyed. This was the only school for the local community.
If this school had been rebuilt, if it had washroom facilities, then the girls from this village wouldn't have to travel for long. It's really warm and there are incidents of stray dogs biting people. So it's important that the schools in local villages become functional and easier for girls to reach.
Missing out on education is still a reality for many in the region.
Because there are no toilets in the school, my mother asked me not to attend the school.
Thousands of damaged schools means the future of an entire generation is at risk. And every effort counts in ensuring a bright future, at least for some of the students.
Joining us from Islamabad is Arif Jabbar Khan, Pakistan Director of Water Aid. Thanks for coming on the program. We just saw a report looking at the long-term influence of last year's floods, particularly when it comes to education. Access to clean water and sanitation seem to be preventing many students from attending schools. How quickly are facilities being built to get children back into classrooms?
Well, actually, the situation is that, you see, there is a serious issue of funding at the moment because there was a Geneva flood conference in January, and almost $10 billion were pledged, but only $1.5 billion have been disbursed so far. So because of that, I think, and also I think with all the everything else happening around the globe, there are still schools where water and sanitation facilities especially are lacking, and because of that, some children are still out of school. So I think it haven't recovered fully. And there are still issues on the ground.
It sounds like a lot of money that's still waiting to be dispersed. How quickly do you think this will happen? It must be very frustrating for parents who want to send their children to school as soon as possible.
Yeah, actually, you see, it is. It's actually a chronic problem that was exacerbated by the floods. So, for example, girls especially have issues with access to, sanitation facilities in a number of schools. Water and sanitation facilities are lacking, especially sanitation, because girls actually sometimes don't go to school during especially their special days, and even during the normal days, sanitation is a serious issue for them. So yes, it is quite frustrating for everyone, and I think until and unless the funding flows have enhanced to the level that was pledged in Geneva, I think this progress will still be slow. So I think the key is around making sure that there is money coming in to support the government and support the local communities in making sure that all the infrastructure that was destroyed is rehabilitated as quickly as possible. Because remember, there was another season of flooding this year, although it was localized, mostly flash floods. But I think the situation was again exacerbated by the floods this year as well. And some of it was not just related to rains in Pakistan. It was also because Pakistan, most of the rivers, number of rivers coming from India also drain into Pakistan. So that also caused localized flooding, and also flooding in some rivers that had not previously received a lot of floods, like the Sutlej and Beas rivers, that hadn't received a lot of water in the last few years, but this year again there was flooding in those rivers also. So it is a continuous struggle for communities living in these areas.
How does an organization like yours plan when we face this unpredictable global climate emergency? You talk about the floods that keep coming, right? Not just the big one from last year, but smaller incidents that you have to sort of contend with.
Yeah. Well, actually, we work at different levels on the ground. For example, we work especially on making sure that the water sanitation and hygiene facilities are restored in the flood-affected communities. And then using that experience, we try to highlight with the government as well as with the donors that this is a serious issue. And especially, I think, for example, in COP28, we are looking at the whole issue of how climate change is impacting the situation in countries like Pakistan, and how the international community can support in a situation where Pakistan is a net recipient of climate change effects, both long term as well as in terms of these extreme events. So we contribute less than 1% to the carbon emissions, but it's the impact of what is happening beyond our boundaries that is actually affecting us. And it's actually those governments who should take responsibility for taking up the load that the people and the government of Pakistan are taking.
Arif Jabbar Khan of WaterAid, thank you so much for joining us.